Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the Midday News. The news is live on Joy 99.7 FM here in Accra. We are live on Love 99.5 FM in Kumasi and over 30 affiliates across Ghana's 16 regions, including Jubilee Radio in Keta, Amenuveve FM in Aflao, Buipe FM in Buipe, and Bolu FM in Bolu. You're also live on your Spotify app and my joyonline.com app. In this edition, a crunch meeting and a public policy discussion on e-levy to save the nation from what the finance minister says is a possible economic disaster. But are the people convinced?
To bring peace, I will beg to say that they can reduce it a little.
A sure way of generating some, not absolute, some taxes to run the country.
We have the latest on the controversial electronic levy as the Association of Bankers make a last-minute appeal for reduction from the proposed 1.75%.
Anything around 1% or below will be a good entry point. I mean, the budget belongs to the economy.
But if government hopes to obtain nearly 7 billion cedis from this levy, should citizens be worried about current financial losses far outweighing the expected revenue?
Our analysis revealed that our specified entity's performance has largely trended downwards. Indeed, SOEs consistently posted aggregate net losses from 2015.
We'll tell you what government has been saying about losses by state-owned enterprises. Also this afternoon, emerging health crisis at a PRT in the western region as survivors of last Thursday's explosion begin to report various degrees of speech and hearing impairment, while others contemplate suicide.
A perforation of the tympanic membrane, the eardrums. A few of them infected because even though they had been given prescriptions, I think they did not manage to get. Almost all of them had mild to moderate hearing loss.
We have a medical assessment of the situation plus hear from the chiefs in the town who are worried their plight may be relegated to the background should any major event come up.
That's got to go. I'm different minds of why did you know?
If you are there, what is it?
And also new research by food scientists at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology reveals sun-dried processed foods such as kokonte helps lower the risk of heart disease.
Even compared to the fresh cassava itself, the kokonte sun-dried one was very low, implying that its consumption should be promoted.
We'll get to face the wall soon. We have sports.
The Minister of Youth and Sports has blamed Ghana's technical team for Black Stars' poor performance in the ongoing African Cup of Nations. We have details in 20 minutes.
And in showbiz, Joy Entertainment opens its 2022 chapter of Celebrate with a Double Dose of Goodness with duo R2Bs.
Now sing for me, Africa lady, bring it on me. I like how you whine it. Now sing for me.
And it's the rat-tat-tat-tat, like they say. You want to stay for details as we bring more from Ademado Hitmakers. That and more here on the Midday News with me, Emefa Apo. Many thanks for choosing us. This is your home of independent, fearless, and credible journalism. Thanks for your company once again. This afternoon, government has resumed talks with leadership of the opposition NDC, hoping to gain their support for the proposed 1.75% electronic levy. This forms part of a strong push to ensure passage of the bill, allowing the levy to take off. Government yesterday held a town hall meeting in Koforidua to court support for the policy. Speaking at the event, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta warned of an impending economic disaster if the tax measure is not approved.
If we don't do this e-levy, you are just pushing yourself in a way that would potentially end up in such a disaster. And I mean, there was a warning of that because last week was a very difficult week for the country. Last week we got downgraded by Fitch, ostensibly because they did not believe we could raise the revenues that we had forecasted. Because we were fighting about e-levy. But what does that mean when you get downgraded and the spreads widen for your bonds? Essentially, what we are saying is that if you go back to the market, you may pay about 500 basis points.
Well, let's hear from some participants of that town hall meeting in Koforidua.
This e-levy thing that the government brings on board, I think, is a sure way of generating some, not absolute, some taxes to run the country.
It's a very good thing. But to bring peace, I would beg to say that they can reduce it a little, like maybe from 175 to maybe 120. You see, so if they make it 1.2, I believe that the next year they can add 3% to become 1.5. Then the other time they can achieve it. They can achieve their goals, but to make sure that they compromise and big peace, I will advise them or urge that they will reduce it a little in order to bring peace, because it's not only the money, they are also struggling power.
Well, are you convinced? Because it appears there was almost 100% acceptance of the e-levy at that town hall. We decided to run an online poll to confirm this. You recall that prior to that town hall, our poll showed 90% were opposed to the tax measure. So what do we have today? Joseph Akable, you've been monitoring that.
In terms of those who have participated so far, and so from the 90%, the no is now at 87.8%, and the yes stands at 12.2%. And so you can say that very little number have changed their mind a bit, but majority still are standing by the fact that they are not convinced that the e-levy should be approved.
Okay. Well, for commercial banks, they've been making a last-minute appeal for the tax to be reduced to at least 1%. John Ewa is Chief Executive of Ghana Association of Bankers.
We've made this point from day one that one of the critical success factors for any policy initiative is the entry framework. How you enter in your policy delivery is very important, and the price is a critical component of the whatever framework that we are using to enter into a new tax handle. So we think, as an association, we think the 1.75
is too high.
It's high. We believe that anything around 1% or below will be a good entry point. I mean, the budget belongs to the economy.
Yeah.
We are going to have even a mid-year
budget. Yeah.
If by that time we see that the response has not been as negative as people have been forecasting, we can take a decision and say, okay, now it's 1.25 or whatever it is, so that we can do a little bit of a wait and see.
Well, that's John Ewa, Chief Executive of the Ghana Association of Bankers. So earlier, we heard from residents of Koforidua, some of whom participated in that town hall. And then also what you've been saying on social media. Let's hear from residents in the Ashanti region.
I still am not convinced about this e-levy, because my personal opinion is that if I have a mobile money wallet, it's still like my personal wallet in my pocket, which has funds that I'm using to run my daily life. If I'm going to be paying tax on having to give my son money for school, tax for having to pay my son's school fees, tax for having to pay for a taxi service, I feel it's not right.
If the e-levy is the only way they are thinking of widening our tax base, I still don't side with it. I am not happy about the e-levy charges. It is going to cripple a lot of businesses, especially for the small-scale businesses.
Well, I think the e-levy should hold, but my only problem is with the rates that they are charging people. Ghana we have a lot of poor people out here, so you might think 1.7 is very little, but when you break the numbers down and go to the ground, it's not that easy. So they should think about the rates, but I do think we still need to pay taxes.
Yesterday, after seeing the charges on the various amount of money you can send on Momo, I was a bit shocked, because it's going to take a lot of money from us, and the businesses are going to suffer, and at long last, we the consumers are going to suffer.
Some residents of the Ashanti region sharing their views on the e-levy. Shortly, I'll take you to Parliament. We know that government is still engaging leaders or members of the minority on this before the reintroduction of the levy in Parliament. Well, my colleague Parker Wilson is monitoring that, but we'll stay on issues affecting the economy because state-owned enterprises reported a 5.3 billion cedis loss in the operations in 2020. More instructive is the reluctance of some of the SOEs to submit annual accounts, with some outstanding since 2017. So to fix the poor state of some of these entities, the Ministry of Finance will no longer support requests for assistance by these enterprises that fail to meet the reporting requirements specified in the Public Financial Act. Deputy Finance Minister Dr. John Kuma, who announced this at an ongoing forum by the State Interest and Governance Authority to improve performance of SOE, described as regrettable the sad state of some of these specified agencies. Presidential Affairs correspondent Elton Brobe is at the forum, but let's hear from Dr. John Kuma first.
And one would have hoped returns on government's investment in them would have been a positive story. Unfortunately, this is not the case. In preparing the 2020 State Ownership Report, our analysis revealed that our specified entities' performance has largely trended downwards. Indeed, SOEs consistently posted aggregate net losses from 2015, an amount of 2.1 billion Ghana cedis, to the latest figure of 2020, which is 5.3 billion Ghana cedi losses, a compound annual growth of 16.2%. Of the 44 SOEs and 16 JVCs covered in the draft 2020 SOE report, 50% and 63% of JVC, 50% of SOEs and 63% of JVCs reported losses. Again, of the 56 OSCs covered, 34% posted deficits.
Well, let's bring in Elton Brobe now. He's at that forum. Elton, so what's been the president's response to the state of some of these SOEs?
So, Emefa, the president has actually been looking at some of the challenges that are faced by some of these state-owned enterprises. Some of them he mentioned includes conflicting policies and actions across government agencies that have bled a common goal and resulted in needless turf war, duplication of efforts, delays, and high cost of doing business. But beyond all of this, he wants the chief executive to leave the entities they are handling better than they met it.
Well, let's take a quick detour, though. You've been monitoring that meeting also on Burkina Faso, that ECOWAS meeting on Burkina Faso. What's the update?
So this is the virtual meeting, which is currently underway. They are now in a closed-door session. So in the opening remarks of President Akufo-Addo, who is the chair of the regional bloc, first he condemned the takeover of the constitutional elected president of Burkina Faso by the military regime, and then put the question before members as to what to do. My information is that, as has been the custom, they will first move to suspend Burkina Faso from ECOWAS and also take other drastic actions. But what they are yet to decide is how the sanctions should be regarding the political unrest in Burkina Faso. After the closed-door session, my information is there will be a communique that will communicate ECOWAS official stance on the military takeover in Burkina Faso.
That's Presidential Affairs correspondent Elton Brobe. Back to issues on the economy and losses being incurred by some state-owned enterprises. Our research desk has been conducting some further checks on these losses. Joseph Akable is a leading member of the desk. He joins me back in the studio. Joseph, thanks for staying with us. How much are we losing as a country from these irregularities committed by the state institutions?
So according to the 2020 Auditor General's report, a total amount of 12.85 billion was captured as irregularities done by public boards, corporations, and other statutory institutions. This include cash irregularities, payments, tax ones, and procurement ones as well, contract irregularities, among others. From the report, the total irregularities figure of 18 million cedis in 2016 increased to 12 billion in 2017. This declined by 8.99 billion in 2018 to 3 billion cedis. However, the total increased by 81.8% from 2018 figure of 3 billion cedis to 5.46 billion cedis. And so This is a lot of money that's going down the drain as a result of not going through the process as required by law.
And you've been looking at what we stand to gain as a country if we're able to close these loopholes in our economy.
If you do the math, on the average, the country lost approximately 6.8 billion cedis every year from 2016 to 2020. So we could rake in some 6.8 billion cedis as additional revenue if we're able to block the loopholes, just about the amount that government hopes to obtain if it begins the implementation of the e-levy from February.
Okay, thank you very much, Joseph Akabule. Let's head to Parliament and get a quick update on that meeting between government and the minority on this e-levy. Kwesi Parker-Wilson is our parliamentary correspondent. Parker, what have you been able to gather?
So the meeting is currently ongoing. The finance minister is present together with the majority leader and the deputy majority leader. Also on the NDP side, we have the minority that will issue and his ranking members in this meeting. Now, before this meeting, I had the opportunity to engage some of the NDC MPs, and they are telling me that there is the hope of the minority that today the finance minister would come with shifted ground. Yesterday, MFA, we are learning that some of the NDC MPs were proposing a 0.5% levy. So if indeed it comes today with the idea of reducing the 1.75%, perhaps the minority might be able to buy into the new charges or the new levy that will come. So that is what we are learning today. So the meeting is currently ongoing. When it's done, of course, we'll give our listeners all the updates.
As always, thank you very much, Kwesi Parker-Wilson, our Parliamentary Affairs correspondent. And it's official that the Speaker, Alban Sumana Kingsford Bagbing, cannot be in Ghana when hopefully the e-levy is reintroduced in Parliament. We're told that he will be away for another medical review in Dubai. It's starting this Saturday and expected back on March 4. And this has raised concerns for members of the majority. We've been hearing from the Majority Chief Whip, Frank Anodompre, and he says they're concerned about the Speaker's frequent trips abroad.
It's worrying. I mean, I can't pretend about it. It's worrying. Also need to get the balance. I mean, he's the Speaker, he's ill, he's taking ill, he needs treatment. Is it the case that we can't get an equally good medical team to have this treatment done here? These are questions we need to ask vis-a-vis the fact that because of the nature of our parliament now and because we have extremely important national duties to be prosecuted. So one would have thought that we'll find an alternative.
Well, the Minority Chief Whip, Mutaka Mubarak, says blaming the Speaker for the near fisticuffs in Parliament is a failure of leadership on the side of the majority. He was also emphatic he cannot guarantee there will not be another clash on the floor of Parliament next week if whoever acts as Speaker attempts to vote again while Bagbing is away for his medical review. He spoke to Evans Mensah on PM Express.
As long as people want to alter the rules, you can never guarantee that there will be no what we call confusion in the chamber. It's not possible. After that, we will resist.
Every means possible?
Well, I really wish our resistance will not lead to exchange of blows, but we will do everything to prevent that from happening.
So Speaker will not be there next week?
So if Speaker is not there, and then you come and then you're putting blame on Speaker, are you being fair?
I mean, I keep coming... That's what I keep coming back to the question
that is why I keep saying that.
What you said...
Unless something is going to change, I know his next review will be...
This weekend?
This weekend.
Which takes him out of the equation for next week?
About a week or two.
For at least the time that has been scheduled according to the paper that was read on the floor by the majority leader. He won't be there next week if he keeps to that schedule.
If he keeps to that schedule, then who do you blame? Even sincerely, don't you see clearly as leadership failure? You see, what leaders cannot know it all.
That's the Minority Chief Whip, Mutaka Mubarak, in that interview with Evans Mensah on PM Express last Wednesday. We'll turn our attention to some other stories now, and it's emerging. We can say that it's an emerging health crisis at Apieti in the Western region, where survivors of last Thursday's explosion are beginning to report various degrees of speech and hearing impairment. According to ear, nose, and throat doctors who are on the ground carrying out medical assessment on the community members, they are worrying signs of mild to moderate hearing loss. This follows earlier revelations by the Psychiatric Association of Ghana that some children there had gone mute after the explosion, while some adults contemplated suicide. We'll hear from the Ghana Medical Association on its reading of the situation in Apieti shortly. First, though, here's a wrap on the cases reported so far.
Initial assessments conducted by personnel from the Psychiatric Association of Ghana at Apiati found a traumatized population of close to 900 displaced persons, including 373 extremely vulnerable children. This also included children who reportedly persistently screamed at night and some who had gone mute since the explosion. Some adults were reported to be struggling with sleep at night, while others were contemplating suicide. Dr. Ruth Aintree is president of the association.
One mother told me that the child since Thursday has not spoken. This is a child that was shown videos of gory sceneries, people dying, the fires, the flames going up and all that. And so people are going through challenges. And like we have said, if we are able to put in intervention at this early stage, we will be able to avert an otherwise severe mental disorders or severe anxiety disorders in the near future.
The association also predicted a risk of severe anxiety disorders and regression of the development of children with a potential impact on their academic performance. It took the conversion of the St. Michael's Catholic Church to a mini clinic for some of the survivors to be assessed by the medical team.
The dressing unit also around. We are currently also preparing a place for the maternity people here, so that those who are pregnant and they have other issues with their pregnancy, they can just go to the nurse who is preparing a place for them to go. And we have also created a place for psychological, to psych them. Even now, we have some people who have some issue when it comes to their sleeping, their fears, anxiety, and other things. Even there is a woman who just came here.
But in the past couple of days, many of the survivors are reporting mild to moderate hearing impairment. Dr. Paul Kwao Intodi is a retired ear, nose and throat surgeon providing medical assistance on the ground.
We had a report to the regional director that some of the victims of the disaster had ear problems. Some had perforated eardrums, bilateral, most of them bilateral perforation of the tympanic membrane, the eardrums, with associated hearing loss. And so far, we've seen about 38 of the victims, most of them with bilateral perforation of the tympanic membrane, the eardrums. A few of them infected because even though they had been given prescriptions, I think they did not manage to get some of the treatment. One or two had their middle ear infected. And almost all of them had mild to moderate hearing loss.
Well, so that's the situation at Piety, and as my colleague Maxwell Agbegba also spent the whole week there, you paint that picture to us subsequently. But let me bring in Dr. Titus Bay, who is General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association. We're grateful for your time here on the Midday News, sir. So as you're hearing these stories and residents recount what it is that you're going through, would you say that this is a normal development after such an incident?
Good afternoon, MFR, and good afternoon to your listeners. I will want to begin by commending the efforts of all the rescue team and emergency response team and the medical teams doing this assessment there. Yes, following such a trauma or traumatic incident, we expect some of these things. For the psychological things, we have what we call post-traumatic stress disorders that will come up. And for that loud nature of explosion, these ear problems being reported also can be expected, that the eardrums may rupture and all. What is unfortunate is the fact that we did hear the doctor saying people are not getting antibiotics and therefore is getting infected. I don't know if it's because of the camps they are living in or how they are grouped and therefore people are being missed by the assessment, or they've been assessed, given the prescription, and it's not being supplied. But that causes for an emergency response in that regard. And I think that the response team must quickly look at providing the adequate medications and antibiotics needed.
But could this situation get worse? Because we are following up on that emergency response and as to why they haven't been giving the medical prescriptions they were given. But what can be done, would you say, to prevent it from getting worse?
Indeed, it can get worse. Because if you take like the infection, normally if an eardrum or a tympanic membrane rupture treated, it can heal spontaneously on its own. without the need for any surgical intervention. But if it gets infected, then there are complications that can make the situation even worse. You can get people developing otitis media and other infections that can even spread all the way to the brain. So the provision of antibiotics for these patients is an emergency. So I think that it calls for a more targeted response and a more targeted response. I know fundraising is going on, people are donating and resources are being raised. An on-site pharmacy must be set up immediately. People should not be given prescription to go look for medication to buy, because within that town, the whole place is destroyed. Are they supposed to travel to the next community to go and look for a drug and buy? And these are people who have lost all their livelihood. So it will be unfortunate that a victim is given a prescription to go look for medication. I think as part of the response, there should be an on-site pharmacy at these camps, emergency camps that have been created. And when you are given a prescription, it should be direct to the pharmacy and you are supplied, because time is of essence.
Okay, we're grateful for your time. That's the General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association, Dr. Titus Bayu. Let me take you back to Parliament, because there's a development there on that discussion on the e-levy between government and the minority. We're told there's a possible review. Kwesi Paka Wilson joins us on the line. Paka, what's the good news?
MFR, we are learning that the finance minister today has to review the levy from 1.75% to 1.5%. In fact, my source in the meeting tells me that the finance minister says it won't go down any further. So it is 1.5%, or they go to the chamber and vote. But the NDC is still rejecting the 1.5, insisting that either no e-levy or perhaps 0.05%.
And what's been the reaction to it? So it's 1.5%. The finance minister says it will go down no further. Have they accepted it? What exactly is going on in the meeting?
The NDC is not accepting the 1.5%. They still insist it's on the high and has to be reduced. So it is either a no levy or perhaps they do 0.5%. So that is the position of the NDC in the meeting. So the meeting is currently ongoing. In fact, you are told that it's going to drag for a while because there's a bit of exchanges in there. So when they are done, as I promised, we will bring all the updates to our listeners.
Thank you very much, Kwesi Parker Wilson there, giving us details of that meeting currently underway between the finance minister and the members of government and the minority side in Parliament. We'll take a quick break here on the Midday News. When we return, we'll talk about how sun-dried processed foods such as kokonte help lower the risk of heart disease. And later in showbiz, Joy Entertainment opens its 2022 chapter of Celebrate with a Double Dose of Goodness with duo R2Vs.
Now sing for me, my Africa lady, bring it on me.
What brings you to my house this early morning? I hope all is well.
All is never well with me, Nick Bakbo. After paying 3 times for the land for my project, the construction workers are now giving me wahala. From material overestimation to small stealing. I am tired.
I told you so, Efokoku.
It's all because you are trying to become builders when you're corporate workers and business people. Edlum has products tailored to meet your needs. Villas 3 at Amrahia, where there are finished homes. Conveniente, also at Amrahia, where it's contemporary but super affordable apartments. Prices start from $35,000. And the Avant-Garde, located in Adjurigano, which has sleek luxury apartments. For more information, please visit edlumhousing.com or simply call 0270-166-166. Edlum Housing, where spacious homes cost less.
Thanks for staying with us. And did you know consuming traditional staples processed through solar or sun drying like kokonte could help you maintain optimum blood sugar levels and lower the risk of heart diseases? Listen to Emmanuel Bryce Kweku of our science desk.
The research published in the Journal of Food and Nutritional Science established that cooked kokonte with sun-dried cassava flour possessed a significantly lower glycemic index of 40.02%. However, boiled cassava and acheke had higher GI values of 77.30% and 79.05% respectively.
With the kokonte, with that of the solar dry, the glycemic index was between 60 thereabout, which means that it falls within the medium glycemic index values, or foods which normally release glucose but not at very high compared to the higher glycemic index.
This afternoon, let's face the wall because it will help us reduce heart disease. Well, Bishop Emmanuel Akun of the Victory Bible Church has prayed for the Multimedia Group Limited to birth new brands and continue to dominate the media landscape in the country. This came up at the group's annual Thanksgiving service held on the theme, God is still with us and for us.
Come on. Clap for yourselves. One of the programs I love from beginning to the end is the walk with Jesus. I still love that word. Amen. And the Saturday 9 to 12, correct? Home Affairs. What's the name? No, Home Affairs. Home Affairs is in the morning. That one was Newsfire. Thank you. Home Affairs too was powerful. Hallelujah. When we're sleeping, when we're not sleeping late, it was about what is meant to. Hallelujah. And then there's another one too. Adum FM still ranks high of all the local languages. From my understanding, Adum FM is number one of all the local. I hope I'm right. So you know that as for you, this is not true. It didn't happen like this. Something is going well for you. He will make my feet to be able to climb. When I couldn't go before, he will make my feet to.
And that's Bishop Emmanuel Akun there at our Thanksgiving today. Christ is still at work with us. And that's how we wrap up today's edition of the Midday News here on Joy 99.7 FM. I am MFR Pao. You can log on to myjoyonline.com for more news. But wait, we are still celebrating R2Bs. I'll leave you with that. After that, we have Living Word with Pastor Mentor Bill.
Sing for me.